morning. Do you remember the song "Turn, Turn, Turn"? Now, I remember hearing this song as a little kid, and I associated it with the show The Wonder Years, right? And for whatever reason, both the song and the show, like, I associated with something really, really sad. Okay, like, even though the show was basically just about this normal family kind of doing normal life, again, it always made me sad. And what I don't think I understood as a little kid when the show would come on is that the show is set against the backdrop of the Vietnam War, which is an event that changed the course and the trajectory of our country forever. The lyrics to the song, "Turn, Turn, Turn," all but about 6 words, are taken straight out of the book of Ecclesiastes, and they go like this. They say, "To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep." See, the song is a reminder that things change, and that's a fact. Now, here's the deal. Few of us really handle change well. We can say that we do, but change is disruptive to the predictable patterns that our brains crave. While few of us handle change well, change is inevitable and change is necessary. If I showed up today wearing nothing but a diaper, you would have serious concerns about my mental health. Amen? Right? If you didn't have serious concerns about my mental health, I would have serious concerns about your mental health if I showed up wearing a diaper and it didn't concern you at all. Check out these pictures. All right. Maybe you've seen images like this on Facebook or online someplace before, where you have these families and they take pictures when the family is super young, and then as time passes, maybe 15 or 20 or 25 years later, the family gets together and they recreate pictures like this. It's adorable, isn't it? It's really, really funny. But here's the thing, like, these pictures are only cute or only adorable because they are ridiculous, right? If adults were to act the same way that these children do, we would be concerned. Okay, just a really silly example of it. So, like, if you and I tried to fit into the clothes that we wore in high school, we would probably pass out from oxygen deprivation, right? Why is that? Well, the fact is, like, we have changed. We've gotten older. Our bodies have changed, and we're not going to fit into the same clothes. In fact, those same clothes that we were wearing back in high school, like, they're so out of style. They're so, that we would look like clowns. Speaking of looking like a clown, I wish. This year I will have been married in June. I will have been married for 11 years. Okay, and I wished someone would have loved me enough on my wedding day or the day before my wedding day to come up beside me and put their arm around me and say, "Hey, Frank, you're getting married tomorrow. You need to shave the soul patch from under your lip." Okay, so now anytime I want to go through our wedding album, I've got this picture of my wife, and she's looking gorgeous. She's beautiful, and I've got this, what looks to be an eyebrow underneath my lip. All right? It was cool at the time, but things change. And again, nobody loved me enough to tell me that this was not going to be a good look 10 years later. Today marks a new chapter in the life of our church. And though it may be uncomfortable on some levels, it's necessary and it's healthy. Webby and I have different strengths and different weaknesses, and if I were dead set on avoiding change and doing things exactly the way that he did, you would be disappointed and I would be miserable. Because we are different men with different strengths and different weaknesses, it would be reasonable and probably healthy to expect some things to look different. For example, you may have heard me say in sermons in the past that our lives, and as well as our faith, our direction determines our destination. So suppose I told you that we, all of us, we're going to pile into the car and head towards Miami Beach. All right, let's suppose that we decided to leave at night because, traffic is going to be light and it's the best time to travel. So we get into the car, and I agree to drive first because I'm selfless and sacrificial, and you get into the back and you fall asleep. All right. You wake up a few hours later, maybe at sunrise, and you look out the window and everything looks the same. You'd be concerned, right? If you looked out the window of the car and you saw the church building, or you saw the shelter house, or you saw the playground, and you were expecting to see something different, you'd be a little bit upset, correct? Because I've set a destination for us, Miami Beach. You'd expect to start seeing some signs that we're inching closer to that place, even if it meant that the familiar scenery had to change. What I'd like to do today is to set before you the coordinates or the destination that I intend to guide us toward as I assume the responsibility of leading our church family. Before I do that, I'd like to clear up what our destination is not. Okay, because different preachers and different churches have different destinations and goals and finish lines in mind. I think it's probably healthy for me to share with you what our destination is not. Okay, for example, some churches and their preachers have healthy budgets as their final destination. And their thinking goes that if their people are giving sacrificially and the church is collecting all the money it needs to do its ministries on a weekly, then things must be going the right direction. Things must be okay. They must have hit their goal. Other churches and preachers track their attendance and count the number of empty seats in their sanctuaries and auditoriums. They set numeric goals of 500 or 800 or 10,000. And they arrive when they hit their numeric attendance goals. Their thinking goes, if there are fewer empty seats this week than last week, then we must be on the right track. Some churches arrive once they build new buildings or launch new satellite campuses. For them, the destination is X amount of square footage under roof. Still others set their destination as the number of services they offer or the number of people that their church baptizes. We've succeeded when we've started our third or fourth service, or we've succeeded now that we've baptized 10 more people. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to be crystal clear on this. Every single one of these, all of them, they're good goals. They're helpful goals. They are even healthy goals, but they are not the destination. Not a single one of them, not even baptism. And here's why. Again, suppose you climbed into the car like before, and we're headed to Miami Beach. You fell asleep in the back seat like before, and when you awoke at sunrise, we were passing through Atlanta, Georgia. Now, maybe you've been on a trip like this before where this has actually happened to you. You woke up and you saw the skyscrapers there in Atlanta, and you knew that you were headed down the right path. You were on the right track. You know that you hadn't reached your final destination yet, but you knew that you were going in the right direction. Put another way, you'd have a totally different feeling if you woke up and looked out the window and you saw the skyline of New York or Chicago, right? Well, you'd expect to see Atlanta on the way to Miami. You would not expect to see Chicago or New York. And so many of these examples are indicators that we're likely headed in the right direction, but they are not the destination. They are not the end that we have in mind. But here's what happens. Many churches and many church leaders ask themselves, well, what would I expect to see at our destination? What would I expect to see at Miami Beach? I would expect to see palm trees and beaches and surf shops and sand. Palm trees and beaches and surf shops and sand. Palm trees and beaches and surf shops and sand. Say that 10 times fast. You'll not be able to do it, I promise. So they expect to see these handful of things, palm trees and beaches and surf shops and sand. And on the way to Miami Beach, they cross that Georgia-Florida state line, and they start to see palm trees and beaches and surf shops and sand. And they think they've arrived when, in reality, they're still in northern Florida. You see, a mature Christian knows that their baptism wasn't the finish line. It was the starter's block. It wasn't the destination, it was the initiation. The beginning, not the end. We must be baptized into Christ. The Scriptures are clear and convincing on that point. But our baptisms are an indication that we're heading in the right direction, not that we've arrived at our final destination. So what is our destination? Where are we going? How will we know that we've arrived? What's our Miami Beach? In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus issued the following command. He said, "Go and make disciples." As a church, we will know that we have reached our destination when our individual members are making disciples who make disciples who make disciples. Dallas Willard describes discipleship this way. He says, discipleship is the process of becoming who Jesus would be if he were you. A disciple is a learner, a student, a protege. And the aim of the disciple maker is to multiply themselves in the disciple, to download their wisdom, their experience, and their insight into their follower so that, and this is important, so that they can repeat the process in someone else. This life-on-life style relationship is necessary because following Jesus is hard. It isn't always obvious, it isn't always easy, and it isn't always popular. In fact, Jesus himself said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their very own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." And then you know what Jesus does? He ratchets up the tension and adds a heavier blow to our comfort. 6 verses later, in verse 33, he says, "So then, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his own possessions." In the book Follow Me, David Platt laments the following, saying, "When I look at the church today, it seems like we've taken the costly command of Christ to go baptize and teach all nations and mutated it into a comfortable call for Christians to come, be baptized, and sit in one location. If you ask individual Christians today what it practically means to make disciples, you will likely get jumbled thoughts, ambiguous answers, and probably even some blank stares. We seem to have exempted one another from any personal responsibility to fish for men. And I'm convinced that the majority of professing Christians would not say their purpose in this life is to make disciples of all nations. So to be clear, I aim to lead us to a place where this will never be said about our church. By God's grace, our church family will see that we exist to make disciples of the real Jesus. Make no mistake, following Jesus is hard. It isn't always obvious, it isn't always easy, and it isn't always popular. We need others who are willing to speak into our lives if we are to persevere and be successful at following Jesus. The fruit of discipleship is more discipleship. The fruit of discipleship is more disciples. Jesus said, "So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits." This is where things get even more uncomfortable. You see, Jesus has a habit of doing this, right? He'll say something and it makes you kind of cringe, and then he'll go 3 verses later and say something that's just going to totally take the wind out of you if you're not prepared. He continues, verse 21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?' Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers." You see, these people certainly seem to have the pedigree that would cause us to believe that they were following Jesus. Look at what they did. I mean, it's impressive, right? But in all their activity and in all their accomplishment and in all their good goals, they apparently lacked the one thing that truly mattered: a genuine relationship with the real Jesus. What does it mean? What does all this mean for our church family moving into 2020? Well, everything that we do must, absolutely must, inch us closer to our destination of making disciples who make disciples who make disciples. Regarding our preaching, it's going to reinforce the foundations of our faith as well as the responsibilities that we have because of that faith. Our preaching is going to clearly identify the character, the passions, and the values of the real Jesus, and then insist that you and I go and imitate those values, those passions, and His character. Regarding our programming, the studies, the events, the activities that we do as a church, I can say this: I won't be changing things immediately. I understand that I need some time to assure you that your confidence in me is well placed. So I want to be delicate, I want to be deliberate, and I want to be clear about major changes when they are on the horizon. To change a bunch of things like right off the bat would probably just sabotage that, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to jeopardize where we're going. But please understand, things will change, and that's good. It's okay. It's probably even healthy. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 25 says, "Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet. Be steadfast in all your ways." Guys, we don't have time for day trips and rabbit trails. People are counting on us to show them the real Jesus. And that means that we need to make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. Before the year ends, we'll have to say no to some things that in the past we've said yes to. We'll have to say no to some programs and approaches that we've enjoyed in the past or that have been fruitful in the past. That's change, and it's healthy. You may come to me and say, "Frank, I'd like to teach this class," or "I think we need to host this event." And that's great. Nothing's off the table. But then I'm going to ask you, how does this event, how does this class, how does this opportunity get us closer to our Miami Beach? How does it help us make disciples who make disciples who make disciples? Because that, brothers and sisters, that is the only thing that matters. That we make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. Before the year ends, we will have to say yes to things that we've never tried before because it is imperative that we make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. So what I'm asking you to do today is this. Let's go on a trip together. Let's go to Miami Beach. Man, it's cold outside here, but boy, it will be nice there. Our Miami Beach is a place where every follower of Jesus is building into and investing in others so that they can follow the real Jesus and help others to follow Him too. Can you imagine what Harrison County would look like if we each started heading that direction? Can you imagine the lives that would be changed and the souls that would be saved if we all piled into the car together as a church family and set off for our Miami Beach? With God's guidance and God's blessing, we'll get there. If you've never placed your faith in the real Jesus, if you've never said yes to Him, you can do that today. You can pile in the car with us. There's more than enough room. You can repent of your sins and you can be baptized into Christ. But know this, when you say yes to Jesus, when you say yes to following Him, you are saying yes to something hard. You're killing the old you, effectively putting him or her to death before that person puts you to death. You won't be alone, But I implore you to count the cost of truly following Jesus before you respond. And understand that by doing so, you are saying, I want to be a follower of Jesus, His disciple. And yes, I'm making it a priority in my life to make disciples who make disciples who make disciples so that they can have a relationship with Him too.